One of the main themes through the novel, The Catcher in the Rye, written by J.D. Salinger, is the loss of innocence. The main character, Holden, is in his adolescent years through the course of the novel, but it is also the time that he realizes that his maturity and preferred way of looking at life is causing his innocence to be lost. While growing up and obtaining a greater knowledge about himself and the world around him, he finds that it is associated with a price. In this case, the price to pay is the decrease in innocent and naive way of living as a child. So, what exactly is innocence? In the case of this theme of this novel, it is defined as the lack of guile or corruption, or the act of being pure. This purity of living through a child's eyes and seeing the world in a simple and carefree state is gradually lost in the novel as Holden's character is revealed. Although The Catcher in the Rye is a fictional novel, it connects with topics that many face. These two verses from the song Back When I Was Young by Jeffrey Lewis represents how everyone loses their innocence at a point in their life. One verse says, "Back when I was 4, I knew the name of every dinosaur. I knew how to read ROM comic books. My babysitter said I was really smart. When the lights went out, everything changed. The radio music made me feel strange. And I had a really bad dream about a gorilla in the bathroom." Later on, Lewis sings, "And back when I was 31, I knew I'd become what I'd become. Nothing left to reveal, and there was nowhere else to turn. So shocked and withered, dumb and bitter, and in need of a babysitter. I'd gladly let my hand fall off and burn, burn, burn." Whether this innocence is lost when they are younger or stays with them until old age, many people don't realize that it is gone until it's too late. This is exactly what happened to Holden. He wanted to live his life with the mind of an adult in the body of a teen, yet at times this was seen to backfire on him. The theme of losing innocence is so real through the novel, especially when looking at the death of Holden's brother Ali. This is because Ali was so pure and innocent at the time of his death, and there was no real reason for him to die and have his life come to a sudden end. Holden and Ali had a close relationship, and the death caused Holden to question a plethora of things, and he began to look at the world in a different way through a different lens. This frame shift of views was caused because Holden, as do most people today, could not bear to understand why such a horrible thing happened to such an innocent person. This particular thought is something that I personally can relate to. I tend to question why people in my life would be punished the way they were and why things happen to certain people, just as Holden did. If we look at how Ali's death relates back to the novel, it's quite easy to draw the parallels. Firstly, innocence goes hand in hand with idealism and the unwillingness to bear and accept reality and the cards that life hands you. Secondly, at this point, Holden is unable to hold on to his own innocence due to the fact that his innocence brings its own harm to people in his life that continue to disappoint him. Following, Holden soon realized that the cost of maturity is lower than the cost of innocence. This was caused by the immense pain and suffering that his innocence caused, so he traded off sanity for the loss of his innocence. Lastly, Ali's memories are the only thing that are helping Holden to preserve his own innocence. It is seen that this isn't enough to fulfill Holden's drive and passion, and that he is unable to find love in the real world because of this. The entirety of the novel is about a troubled teenager named Holden Caulfield who is struggling with the fact that everyone has to grow up at some point or another. He is constantly concerned with the loss of innocence as he loses his, and is determined that he does not want children to do the same. Although he does not want children to grow up, he feels like the adults of his generation are corrupt. He also wants to keep their purity as long as possible. This is seen when he first tries to erase profanities from the bathroom walls. Holden states, "While I was sitting down, I saw something that drove me crazy. Somebody had written 'fuck you' on the wall, and it drove me damn near crazy. I thought how Phoebe and all the other little kids would see it, and how they'd wondered what the hell it meant. And then finally, some dirty kid would tell them, all cocky, naturally, what it meant, and how they'd all think about it, and maybe even worry about it for a couple of days. I kept wanting to kill whoever had written it. I figured it was some perverted bum who'd sneak into the school late at night to take a leak or something, and then wrote it on the wall. I kept picturing myself catching him at it, and how I'd smash his head on the stone steps till he knew as good and goddamn dead and bloody." This quote directly related to Holden's deep concern about the loss of innocence, which caused him to stereotype about those who would try to corrupt elementary-aged children. He thinks that all children are innocent because they view the world through simple eyes without any bias or negative connotations. His sister Phoebe asked him what he would like to be when he grew up, and the only thing he could think of to be was the catcher in the rye, which is a strange fantasy through the novel, but also a key symbol. This symbol is representative through the novel. Holden imagines a field of rye perched high on a cliff, full of children roaming and playing. He claims that he would like to protect the children from falling over the edge of the cliff by catching them if they were on the verge of tumbling over. As Phoebe points out, Holden has misheard the lyrics. He thinks the line is, "If a body catch a body comin' through the rye," but the actual lyric is, "If a body meet a body comin' through the rye." The song "Comin' Through the Rye" has a completely different meaning. It is asking if it is wrong for two people to have a romantic encounter in the field away from the public eye, even if they don't plan on having a commitment to one another. This brings in the sense of irony that the word meet refers to an encounter that leads to recreational sexual acts, but the word that Holden substitutes it with is catch, which takes on the exact opposite meaning in his mind. Holden wants to catch the children before they fall out of innocence into knowledge of the adult world, which includes the knowledge of the actual meaning of the song. If a body catch a body comin' through the rye. He kept picturing all these little kids playing some game in a big field of rye and all. Thousands of little kids, and nobody around, nobody big, I mean, except me, and I'm standing on the edge of some crazy cliff. What I have to do? I have to catch everyone if they start to go over the cliff. I mean, if they're running and they don't look where they're going. I have to come out of somewhere and catch them. That's all I'd do all day. I'd be the catcher in the rye and all. I know it's crazy, but that's the only thing I'd really like to be. This quote directly explains how Holden's goal is to stop the falling children from losing their innocence and beginning their process into adulthood. Near the middle of the novel, Holden begins to change. He is not as childish as he once was. When he was waiting for an old friend to come by, he suddenly has the urge to go visit an old museum that he used to like. This urge was caused because he wanted to hold on to childhood memories that he had previously made. But when he got there, he decides not to go in. He states, "Then a funny thing happened. When I got to the museum, all of a sudden, I wouldn't have gone inside for $1,000,000. It just didn't appeal to me." It was at this point that the reader is now able to realize that Holden is losing his own innocence and becoming an adult as he now possesses adult qualities. Again, later in the novel, Holden realizes that he is too old to take part in certain activities. When he takes his sister, Phoebe, to a carousel later in the book, he decides to not ride on it with her. He even went as far to not even stand on it, even though it was in the middle of a rainstorm outside, but he felt as if he was too old to even get on it. With this, Holden has another one of his childish fantasies for the future. He wanted to go and be a deaf mute somewhere in the West, so he wouldn't have to deal with the phonies and hypocrites in his everyday life. Phoebe told him that she wanted to go with him, but he chooses to deny her because of his growing responsibility that adulthood is giving him. He tells her, "I'm not going anywhere. I've changed my mind." At the end of the novel, Holden seems to be much more mature than he was at the beginning. The main aspect that shows us this is when he made the decision to not ride on the carousel with his younger sister. Holden chose only to watch instead of partaking in the activity. As well, in the center of the carousel, there was a gold ring which was used in order to win prizes. All of the kids kept trying to grab for the gold ring, and so was old Phoebe, and I was sort of afraid she'd fall off the goddamn horse, but I didn't say anything or do anything. The thing with kids is, if they want to grab for the gold ring, you have to let them do it, and not say anything. If they fall off, but it's bad if you say anything to them. The carousel symbolizes life and the constant journey of childhood into adulthood. Children sometimes fall when they are trying to reach for the gold thing in the center of life, yet they get back up and try again, showing persistence and perseverance. Holden would normally tell them that it is dangerous and to not do what they are doing, but he realizes that everyone should follow their own paths. So think about it. How does a person get from here to here? From childhood to adulthood? Is there even such a thing? Is it your environment, your upbringing, your friends, the school you go to, or the house you live in? Is it where you live, or how many siblings you have? Is it birth order or intelligence? Is it nature or nurture, or a combination of both? The rate at which a person develops from childhood to adulthood varies person to person, and internal and external factors affect this change. Holden's transition was early and fast, but not everyone's is. The immature boy in your science class is holding on to his innocence and childish personality, whereas the 18-year-old, going on 48-year-old that you're sitting beside has matured into an adult. Losing one's innocence is a unique time that changes for everyone, yet comes at one point or another for all. In conclusion, through the novel, Holden aimed to save all the children from growing up and losing their innocence. When he finally realized that he would be unable to achieve this goal, he had a nervous breakdown and did not know what to do with himself. He wanted to act as the catcher in the rye, which we learned is not possible. However, at the end of the novel, he does realize that it is an inevitable fact that everyone has to grow up at some point, including himself. This 25-minute documentary outlines the lives of young children that lived in Syria in 2012. Recently, over the past few months, the Syrian refugee situation has been the height of the news and what has been talked about on our TVs, in our homes, and in our schools. Living in a war zone causes many children to live a different way of life than a child here in North America would. They learned to face the harsh realities of what living in a war-zoned country really was and matured much faster. There was no transparency with their families. The children lived a very black and white life, knowing what was happening right outside their door. They aren't living as regular children. They are bombarded with terror and hate that surrounds them every day. So here are my questions. Firstly, how much can we trust Holden's descriptions of other people? Is Phoebe really so smart and wonderful? Secondly, if Holden is so obsessed with saving children's innocence and acting as the catcher in the rye, why doesn't he worry about his own? What does innocence mean to him? Lastly, is Holden a hypocrite for wanting to preserve everyone else's innocence, yet he does not seem to value his own even in the slightest? Do you think that this added or took away from the plot and effectiveness of the novel? Thank you.